Great. Hi, everyone. My name is Emily, and yes, I am graduating on Saturday. That's coming up really fast, but I'm really excited. I'm also a super senior, which makes graduating that much more exciting for me. Yeah, thank you. My major is interior architecture. My minor is business administration. Here we go. And this is often how I introduce myself to people, especially those around campus. But another title that I'm not always so transparent about, and that I don't always share right away, is being a Christian. So I was born and raised in a Christian household, yet growing up, I never knew exactly what it meant to be a Christian. Even though my parents, both sets of my grandparents, their entire lives, they've all been Christians. It was never something that we talked about together. We went as a family to church most every Sunday, and then we would drive back home, but we would leave the sermon at the altar every time. Because of how those around me had handled their faith, during middle school and high school, I really struggled with my faith a lot. I struggled with what it meant to be a Christian. I didn't understand what that meant, and why did I call myself this if I didn't do anything for it. In high school, I tried to be good. I tried to read from the Bible every night, which actually turned into maybe once or twice a week, if I was lucky, and even then, I could barely get myself to read one little chapter. In middle school and high school, I didn't really talk. I didn't speak unless I was spoken to most of the time, and I was extremely quiet. And because of this, I was never one of those people with a huge friend group. High school was especially hard for me because the couple close friends that I did have crumbled by my senior year. It got to the point where every day, at the end of the day, I felt excluded, I felt unwanted, not pretty enough, not funny enough, just not enough. But for someone who's never considered themselves that good at making friends, I felt like the couple friends that I did have would just have to do, no matter how they treated me or what happened. Since during this time I had a lack of purpose in my life, my friend group was something that I had been idolizing instead. And since it was turning me down, I soon became depressed. At this time, I felt so unworthy and so unwanted every day. So much soon that every day on my drive back from high school, I would consider ending my life. Because I became so withdrawn into myself and really relying on myself during this time, I felt like I was the one who had the most control in my life. So when it came to God, I thought that I didn't need him because I thought that I knew what was best for my life. When I entered college, relationships with guys became a new struggle for me. I had struggled with relationships with friends in the past, and was determined to make my relationships with guys make me feel better than the ones with my friends had. For a couple years, I always seemed to have a new guy in my life, but they never stuck around. And because of this, I felt like I had to be better than what I was. I felt like I had to be someone that I wasn't and do things I wasn't. And to keep them around, I felt like I had to give in to sexual sin. And so I did. And at the time, I really didn't think anything of it. And the worst part was that I felt like cooler because I was doing this. I felt like guys would like me more, or that people would think I was cooler if they knew that I did those things. And although I had this voice in the back of my head telling me that it was wrong to be doing this, I felt like this was the one thing that was keeping people around. Before I knew it, it was my last semester of college, and I had created a bucket list of things in my head I wanted to do before I graduate on Saturday. Things like hockey games and belts runs, things like that, and going to Cru is also something that I've been wanting to explore more. I had been to Cru a couple times last year with two of my friends, but this year they had class during that time and unfortunately couldn't go. So the thought of going to something like Cru alone was very terrifying for me, and this kept me from going my first week of the semester. The second week, I told myself, if this is something I really want to do and something that I really want to explore, I'm going to have to do it, even if that means doing it by myself. So I went that second week, and I met some staff outside the doors that week. And right before Cru started, I'd first gone and sat by myself, and I felt very nervous about that. I thought, what are people going to think of me? They're going to think I have no friends, or like all of these things. So I was very nervous, but right like 2 minutes before Cru started, someone came and sat by me, and this just immediately made me feel welcomed. From there, I was encouraged to attend Fall Getaway, which changed my life. At Fall Getaway, I was taught things that I had already learned about Jesus in the past, but I had learned these things at Fall Getaway. I learned them in a completely different light. I never knew that Jesus could be fun, and that worship, I didn't know that, and that worship could bring tears to my eyes, and that I could talk about my faith with anyone, let alone people my age. Like, that was something completely foreign to me. That weekend at Fall Getaway, that's when I made the decision to end my sexual sin and to believe in someone that's greater than myself. I think it really took going back to school after Fall Getaway to really let all of that sink in, like going back to reality after such a great weekend. I had such great company when I was at Cru and Cru-related things that when it came to my personal life, I didn't have anyone to talk to about my faith, and I was still really scared to do this by myself. So, since Christian company is something I've never had in abundance, an incident happened within this last month, actually, with other friends that I'm very close to. And this incident had made me feel extremely crushed. And once again, I felt extremely alone. I wrote down that night saying how I felt, saying that I went to bed last night believing I had no best friends on this entire earth. And my earthly heart is hardened, but my soul rejoices. The blessing in this is that although right now I feel like an empty, hollow shell, that now I have more room to fill myself with Jesus. I feel at the very bottom of myself right now so that I can reconstruct with him. I have died, but can now be born again, thanks to this. Because it didn't take me long to figure out that God was trying to tell me something in my life. He literally had to shake my entire world for me to notice what he was doing. He was trying to give me a new beginning and a new start with new people, which is something I could have never done by myself. Only he could do that for me. On that note, I wanted to read a verse to you that personally I have heard a million times, but never really accepted it. Only within the last couple months I've heard it with new ears. Because I had always thought that being a good Christian meant making life harder for you. Because the church I grew up in taught faith in a way that was being rules and standards, very black and white ways of life, and jokes were never ever made during my church. It was a very serious time. But I've discovered that this is the farthest thing from it. My life is simpler, it is more beautiful, and I see things differently. I do not have to worry about trying to be perfect, like this worldly pressure makes me feel, because I can recognize that I am nowhere near perfect, but I can know that through Christ that I don't have to be. All right, so back to the verse I was going to say. It's from Luke chapter 9, it's verse 24, and it reads, "For whoever desires to save his life will lose it, but whoever loses his life for my sake will save it." Later on in that same chapter, Jesus says, "For the Son of Man did not come to destroy men's lives, but to save them." So this is my story, and if it resonated with any of you, or you'd just like to say hi afterwards, I'll be in the back of the room after group.